Hey everybody, how's it going? This weekend I topped the Stevenage Regional. I came 7th place playing the Yummy deck. So I thought I'd just do a little deck profile to show you what the deck's about because it's new from Justice Hunters and the list that I played because I was very happy with it this weekend. Just a couple of things before we start. I did borrow a few cards for this event, which I've now had to give back. So they'll be blank, but hopefully I'll remember to put them in post, and I'll say their names as well, just so that you know what they are. But without further ado, here is the deck profile. So for the starters, we played 3 Cupsy Yummy. This is the best starter in the deck because not only does it function as a level 1 body to make your Link monster, it also searches for any Yummy card except for itself. So you just normal summon it and you immediately get access to your Yummy Surprise, which you can use as an extender and also as other applications that we'll go into a bit later on. We played 3 of the Cookie Yummy and 3 of the Lollipo as starters. These guys basically function all exactly the same. They're just level 1 bodies that you link off into the Link monster. You play all of them, you play as many as you can because you don't have too many starters in the deck and you want to be sort of consistent with seeing them. But yeah, they all have really relevant effects. So when they're summoned just on their own, if they're normal or special summons, Cookie can reduce a monster's attack by 1,000, and Lollipo can shuffle a card from your opponent's graveyard back into the deck. And they get additional effects if they're summoned off of a Synchro Monster's effect. So the Cookie, when it's summoned by a Synchro's effect, can destroy a monster your opponent controls, and Lollipo can banish the card instead of shuffling it back into the graveyard, which is pretty relevant in the mirror match because if you destroy their field spell and you banish it, it's very difficult for them to continue playing the game after that. And then for the rest of the starters, Obedience Schooled is basically the best card in your deck. Every time this resolves, it feels absolutely amazing. You just get 3 bodies for free. The amount of times that you draw this and your opponent is forced to ash it because it's just so powerful. It's not actually hard once per turn, so you can activate multiples. It's also insane going second. And the later you resolve it, the better going second. So if you can force your opponent into a spot where they've had to use up all of their interruptions and you've got no monsters on the field, you can just Obedient School and get 3 free bodies from the deck, which is pretty insane. This card is absolutely broken. Definitely one of the best cards in the entire deck for me. In terms of extra starters, we played 1 copy of Engage, 1 copy of Hornet Drones. Now a lot of the lists are playing more of these. I've seen a lot of people on 3 Engage, 2 Engage, and the 1 Drones. The reason that I played 1 and 1, even though you do need some extra starters in this deck just to get it going, is because the combos that involve the drones and the Engage are a little bit awkward, so they require you to either put another body on the field in order that you can play around hand traps, so your Cupsy Synchro doesn't get hand trapped and you just immediately run out of gas. And it's also really awkward if you want to draw a card off of Cupsy to draw into another Engage, which you then can't activate because obviously it can't search for itself. So once you've used up the drones that's in the graveyard, that's it. Overall, these were pretty good. I mean, I'd probably still play it. It conflicts with one of the other cards in the deck, which I'll come on to later. But yeah, they were decent overall. And then just the last sort of quote-unquote starter card is Pot of Prosperity. It also functions as some non-engine in this deck as well, which again I'll get into a bit later on, but Prosperity, when I resolved it, was actually really, really good in this deck, and it actually ended up winning me 1 game resolving a Prosperity this weekend. And then in terms of the other additional engine cards, so you've got the 2 field spells, which you really do need to play. The Mignon is an extender, so just the 1 card combo, you activate it, you get to summon a level 1 back from the grave while you control a Link 1 monster. The Akroki essentially is your interruption in your opponent's turn. When you synchro summon a light beast synchro monster, you can target a card your opponent controls and destroy it. One thing this deck does struggle with is interacting with your opponent's back row. It's got a lot of stuff that deals with stuff in their front row in their monster zones, but dealing with back row that you want to get rid of can be a bit tricky, and a Crocky is probably the best way of doing that. It's also got a little hidden effect. It's not really hidden, but a lot of people don't know about it just yet. So if a face-up monster you control leaves the field because of your opponent's card effect, you can special summon a Yummy monster from your deck. Both of these are really good. You have to play both. They both provide insane value and grind game, because they also shuffle themselves back from the graveyard, as well as your other Yummy monsters to put resources back in the deck. So as long as they don't get banished, then you're in pretty good shape. Little extra point on the field spells, by the way, they can also put back Yummy monsters from banishment. So if for whatever reason you get your Synchros banished, or you get your Snatchies banished, and you can get the field spell in the graveyard, then you can just put them back to the bottom of the deck, or back in the extra deck, which is pretty nice. I also played 3 Surprise, which I know a lot of people aren't playing, but Surprise is probably one of the best cards in the entire deck, in my opinion. It's not a starter, but it does function as an extender, and if you don't have to search it with Cupsy, that is a massive bonus. It has 3 effects, all of which are once per turn, so you can activate multiple copies of the card in a turn. So the first effect is that you can target 2 light beast monsters you control, and 2 cards that your opponent controls, and return them to the hand. This is pretty huge because, well, you don't really care about your stuff getting bounced, and you want them in your hand so you've got follow-up, or what you can also do is you can synchro them off, so you can target them, quick synchro them away, and then obviously they won't get bounced and your opponent's stuff still will. The second effect is to special summon a Yummy monster from your hand or graveyard, but it can't attack directly this turn. It's important to note that last bit, it doesn't come up super often, but if you're going for game, you just want to make sure you sequence your attacks correctly. But it's the main effect you'll probably use if you get interrupted, or just as part of your combo sequencing during your opponent's turn. It's really helpful, functions as an extender for if you get interrupted. I played 3 because it's just insane to draw, and it feels like you want to open one. If you get interrupted, you want to grab another one so you can get the most out of both of the first effects. And then a lot of the time I felt as though I got a lot more value out of searching follow-up off of the Cupsy. You probably could cut one of these, but I quite liked searching during my opponent's turn for a surprise, just for that little bit of extra follow-up if I already had a name in hand, for example. So I thought it was pretty good. Moving on to the non-engine then. And my idea with the non-engine for this event was to play as few as possible, in this case 0 monster hand traps in the main deck, so as not to turn on the canine cards during my turn or during my opponent's turn, and make it as miserable as possible for my canine opponents to play the game. So starting off, we have 3 infinite impermanents, pretty much exactly what you think of when someone says, non-monster hand trap. We also played 3 Dominus Purge, which I have now returned that I borrowed for the event, thank you Matt, which was pretty good, and this is the card that I was talking about earlier, that I said conflicts with the Sky Striker card. So if you resolve a Purge from your hand during your opponent's turn, Gagari's a fire, and Purge turns off your fire effects. This was pretty relevant, so I had one match where I was top decking. I'd resolved a Purge previously in the game, I had no monsters on the board, and I top decked into a Hornet Drones. It didn't end up mattering because my opponent scooped anyway, but yeah, so the drones would have been dead in that spot. But the effect was nice. It comes up a lot in situations that maybe you don't really expect. There's some relevant cards in the format that it can't hit, most notably probably Rahu Dracotail, because obviously that's a branded fusion-like effect. It doesn't add a card from the deck to the hand, but we've got stuff in the side deck to deal with that as well. 3 Songs of the Dominators. This card felt absolutely insane this weekend, especially when you draw it paired with another hand trap card. The only downside to this card is they can ash it, but it has massive upside, that being you can't, it doesn't target the monster on the field that it's negating, which is pretty huge in this format because obviously Vanquish Soul, Dracotail, and Yummy can all dodge targeting effects. So that is pretty huge. And yeah, so the additional effect of searching for Purge does come up quite a lot as well. I say searching for Purge is search for any Dominus card, but in this deck it searches for Dominus Purge. And the drawback, the restriction, if you activate this card from your hand, you can activate the effects of monsters in your hand, graveyard, and banishment until the end of the next turn, is not actually relevant in this deck at all, because there is a grand total of one effect in this entire deck list that activates in the hand, graveyard, or banishment outside of the side deck, but I'll go through that a bit later as well. These cards were really, really good. I probably wouldn't change anything. I really liked the lineup. It was a bit frustrating when the songs got ashed, but that's Yu-Gi-Oh! Really. That was it for the sort of hand trap portion of the deck. The rest of the main deck was board breaker cards. So again, I have returned these, but we played 3 Triple Tactics Thrust, which is an absolutely crazy card because not only can it search for your board breakers, it can set Songs of the Dominators, Dominus Purge, Imperm from the deck going first. It can also search for Obedience Schooled, so if you need it for follow-up you can set it, or if you're in your opponent's turn you can thrust into an Obedience Schooled and then just go full combo. In terms of targets, we played 1 Triple Tactics Talent, 3 Dark Ruler No More, and 3 Evenly Matched. So the Dark Ruler No More was a last minute addition, and it actually felt really, really nice. All of the times that I resolved it, it was very relevant in helping to break the board, but the absolute standout for the tournament was Evenly Matched. Every time I resolved this card, it felt like I was so far ahead. I played against a few Raizo Mitsurugi, which I was hoping not to because I didn't think it would be so good into that matchup, but it did help because Yumi's such a grindy deck. It felt like you could keep up. It limited a lot of their interactions and forced out a lot of things using just one card, so it generally felt very nice. And then the last card we played was just a Called by the Grave in the main deck. Just seemed pretty nice in general, beating the minigame with the Molchamis and other hand traps. You don't lose to them anyway necessarily, but it just felt nice interacting with that. There's also a lot of relevant graveyard effects, so for example Dracotail, the monsters really do mess up your strategy pretty badly, so interacting with those in the graveyard is quite nice. Moving on to the extra deck, we played 3 copies of Yummy Snatchy, which is basically the crux of the deck. It requires a level 4 or lower light beast monster, so you can summon it with any of your main deck level 1s. You can summon it with the Synchros. You can also summon it with some of the other techie cards that we play. And basically what it does, when it's special summoned, it places a field spell from your hand or deck face up on the fields. The restriction is you can't link summon link 3 or higher monsters for the rest of the turn, which is not really a restriction for this deck. And then the other effect is once per chain during your opponent's main phase, once per chain, not once per turn, which a few of my opponents did think it was, is once per chain. You can pay 100 life points to immediately synchro summon using monsters you control as material, including a Yummy monster, so it doesn't have to synchro with itself. So a lot of the times you'll put this up in the extra monster zone, you'll have a couple of monsters down beneath it, and you'll use those, and one Snatchy can just really control the game and just run the turn for you. We played 1 of each of the Yummy Synchros, so Cupsy, Lollipo, and Cookie. Usually you'll summon Cupsy first as part of your combo, you'll go through the Lollipo to summon back some from the grave, and then the Cookie is really used in your opponent's turn for the disruption. They all have the effect where if your opponent activates an effect, they put themselves back in the extra deck for cost to summon 2 Yummy monsters from the graveyard, which obviously will also trigger their effects when they're summoned back from the grave. These cards are all absolutely broken. This one's a double Book of Moon, this one is a double Monster Reborn, and this one is just searches for 2 Yummy cards and discards a card, so there's not much more really you could ask for out of these. They are very, very, very strong. We then played 1 Martial Metal Marcher and 1 Starham. You go through both of these as part of different combos. So the Metal Marcher, what it does when it's synchro summoned, it summons back a tuner in your graveyard but negates its effects. So you can use it to summon back one of your synchros because these are all tuners, and you can link these off into a Snatchy then. and then you use the Martial Metal Marcher because it's a tuner, and then one of your level 1 bodies to make a Herald of the Arclight. The Starham functions very much the same, but it does it in a different way. So it summons back one of the monsters that was used as material by discarding a card, and then that monster is then treated as a tuner, because this is not a tuner itself, and you can use those two bodies to make a Herald of Arclight. It's especially important in the combo where you use Obedience School, because that locks you into beast monsters, and Starham being a beast monster, you can summon that. You can set it up with Starham and then a level 1 on the field, and then during your opponent's turn you can use the effect of Snatchy to synchro those off into an Arclight. And then the Herald of Arclights we played 2 of, so you can make 1 Herald of Arclight in your turn. Some combos you can make double Herald, but most of the time what you'll find is you'll make 1 Herald in your turn as part of your combo. You'll play, the Herald will eventually negate something, and then at some point during your opponent's turn you can make a second Herald of the Arclight just to put the final nail into the coffin for them. For other Link monsters, we played 1 Kagari for the Sky Striker engine. Obviously, it's part of the combo. It's also a Link 1. I forgot to mention all of the yummy synchros. They all say on them you can treat a level 1 Link monster you control as a tuner for the purposes of its synchro summon. That's how the deck functions, basically. Yeah, you summon this every time you draw drones, and you don't summon it outside of that, of course. 1 Relinquished Anima, it's just a good generic Link 1 monster, helps you to out floodgates like there can be only one. It's also good if your opponent has a bit of a zoning issue and they summon a monster in the Anima zone. It didn't really come up for me that much during this event. I summoned it once, I think, just for the purposes of it being a generic Link 1 monster. So other than that, that was pretty good. Played 1 Link Spider, helps you to play through Nibiru. So what you want to do is you want to keep one of your names in hand so that if they Nibiru you, you can turn the token into a Link Spider, and then you can summon the Yummy monster from your hands, and then you can turn the Link Spider and the Yummy monster into one of your level 2 synchros and carry on playing. We played Ukano Mitsune no Onari. This is a bit of a weird one. I didn't summon it too often. Basically what it does is it requires 2 light monsters, including a beast monster, and when it is summoned, you can set 1 quick play spell from your graveyards. So if you are in a spot where you don't have access to Cupsy to search for a surprise and you want to access a surprise, you can use 2 monsters and summon this. It also has some bonus effects, like your opponent can't target cards in the field spells with card effects, and if it's destroyed, you can apply the following effects up to the number of cards in a field zone. So if there's 1, you get 1, if there's 2, you get 2, and that's either you destroy a card your opponent controls or you inflict 1500 points of damage to them. I summoned it a few times. It's quite nice. I don't know if I would replace it for something else, but in theory it seems very nice, and it's especially good when you get hand trapped. You can just go into this quite a lot of the time and just set a surprise if you need to extend or etc. It's just generally a pretty good piece of your end board at that point. And then lastly, just SP Little Knight helps you hit a lot of the things that the engine doesn't deal with that well otherwise. A lot of times it'll hit some back row. It's also just a good generic end board piece sometimes, and if your opponent's got something a bit troublesome that you'd like to be banished rather than in the graveyard, then making SP is probably a pretty good idea. But that's it for the extra deck. And then moving on to the side deck. Played 3 copies of A Solemn Judgment, sided this in every single time going first. The card is just absolutely crazy. It adds that extra layer of interruption to your end board where you basically just say, you know, this board is completely unbreakable. It's helpful as well because I find a lot of people at the moment are probably still playing or starting to play a lot of board breakers, and obviously it's just good against a lot of the board breakers that really can interact really poorly for you, like Dark Ruler No More, things like that. Judgment can provide a little bit of insulation to that. It's just a very, very good card in general, and if you're playing against the mirror match, then Judgmenting on their first summon can sometimes be a very good play and completely shut down their turn. We played 1 D-Barrier as a thrust target. It's the only thrust target that we played. I thought about playing some other ones like Daruma Karma Cannon, and things like that. But Deep Barrier seemed like one that overall hit a lot of cards in the format, just seemed a very safe side deck option. Obviously it hits Dracotail, it hits Yummy. I wouldn't side it in against Vanquish Soul, typically, because they can usually play without accessing their extra deck if they need to. But yeah, in general, just a pretty solid card in the format. It's also very good against Mitsurugi Raziel. You get to turn off half of their deck, basically, and this is the matchup that this deck struggles with. So yeah, good into quite a lot of the decks in the field of this format. Played one goes match, pretty self-explanatory, turns off pretty much all of Vanquish Soul, Canine, and it's pretty good into Dracotail as well, because quite a few of them are different attributes. I don't know if I'd side it in, maybe if I'd seen they were playing a Lava Golem or something like that. But yeah, it's just good in general for the Vanquish Soul matchup. One Duster as a thrust target, pretty much sided in every time going second, especially because obviously a lot of people are on Floodgates going first against Yummy. There can be only one is a pretty big one that completely destroys this deck if you don't draw the right hand for it. 3 Lancia, because Malice is still in the format. Also interacts pretty well with Dominus Purge. You can keep the Dominus Purge in the deck. Not that I'm not sure if you would do against Malice. I didn't play any this weekend, but yeah, just in general, 3 Lancia still feels pretty mandatory while the deck's in the format. And then last 6 cards in the side deck, we played 3 Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion, and 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. The Ash Blossom came in quite a lot of matchups. I figured a lot of people, when they are going second, they would side into or be maining 6 Small Charmies. So you put the Ash Blossom in going first for those. They're also pretty good, obviously generically into a lot of matchups, but very specifically into Dracotail when you're going second, because they set the trap cards, and then when they activate them in your turn, you can actually use the Ash on the trap cards. Same is true for Dominus Purge and for Ghost Spell as well. So Ghost Spell is always going in against the Dracotail matchup as well, because they put a card back from the graveyard into the deck to draw a card. So if you can stop that, that's one of their major points of interaction during your turn, so that is pretty huge. The Ghost Bell as well has some applications in the mirror match. So probably the best spot to hit the Yummy deck with the Ghost Bell is when they put back the level 2 Synchro, and to summon back from grave when you activate an effect, and then they lose obviously the 2 bodies from the graveyard and then the monster from the field as well, because it puts itself back for cost, so that's pretty huge. You can probably also use it sometimes on the field spell to summon back from grave. I wouldn't advise it on their first turn necessarily, because they're going to play exactly the same way if they have an extender or if they don't, so you don't know if it's going to be good value. If you have something to stop their extender, then absolutely by all means go ahead, but proceed with caution on that one. If it's a simplified game state, I could see that being a very good spot to interact with the deck, but otherwise, yeah, probably just stick to the level 2 synchros. And that was the deck profile. Shout outs to Matt for lending me cards. Shout outs to Connor as well for lending me a couple songs of the Dominators, and shout outs to Luke and Owen for all of the testing we did in preparation for the event. So thank you guys. If you have any questions, any suggestions, do leave them down in the comments down below, and remember to leave a like and subscribe. Peace.